I'm gonna stay on the battlefield. I'm gonna stay on the battlefield. I'm gonna stay on the battlefield till I die. I'm gonna stay on the battlefield. I'm gonna stay on the battlefield. I'm gonna stay on the battlefield until I
I had come into the city carrying life in my eyes amid rumors of death, calling out to everyone who would listen. It is time to move us all into another century, time for freedom and racial and sexual justice, time for women and children and men, time for hands unbound. I had come into the city wearing peaceful breasts, and the spaces between us smile. I had come into the city carrying life in my eyes. And they followed us in their cars with their computers, and their tongues crawled with caterpillars, and they bumped us off the road, turned over our cars, and they bombed our buildings, killed our babies, and they slaughtered our doctors, maintaining our bodies, and their courts changed into confessionals. But we kept on organizing, we kept on teaching, believing, loving, doing what was holy, moving to a higher ground, even though our hands were full of slaughtered teeth. But we held out our eyes, delirious with grace. But we held out our eyes, delirious with grace.
I'm gonna treat everybody right. I'm gonna treat everybody right till I I'm gonna treat everybody right. I'm gonna treat everybody right. I'm gonna treat everybody right till I
Come, I say come, you sitting still in domestic bacteria. Come, I say come, you standing still in double-breasted mornings. Come, I say come and return to the fight, this fight for the earth, this fight for our children, this fight for our life. We need your hurricane voices, we need your...
Well, I don't know what will happen now. We've got some difficult days ahead. But it really doesn't matter with me now because I've been to the mountaintop. I don't mind. And I've looked over and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land.
To this battlefield called life, 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 life.
Life, life, life. Life is what brings us together this afternoon. Life is what we are fighting for, and the battlefield we now know not only lives in our brains and in our spirit, the battlefield lives in what some believe is an armor-laden exterior when our bodies, all of our bodies, suffer the ramifications of unchecked, misunderstood origins of trauma and violence. It is by no coincidence that Yale Divinity School and the School of Nursing have partnered in this context. Through this lens, we are often thought of as being in the life-giving, life-sustaining, and some would say life-saving business. The intersection or transcendence of science and the soul remains a powerful gesture to the possibilities. Dr. King envisioned the mountaintop and yet knew his body would not bear witness to the peaks, only the emerging valleys. Today, Resmaa Menakem, too, will speak to the wrestling with the urgency of now and yet be transparent about the generations-long battlefields that we must still trudge. While daunting, I remind you that we are not in the trenches, nor on the front lines alone. And for that, I thank all of you who have decided to give of your time to join us today. My name is Lynn Sullivan, and I am the Director of Community Equity at Yale Divinity School, and I am joined here today with YDS graduate students Jaquan and Nia, and YSN graduate student Taisha, and my colleague Heather Reynolds. In the spirit of empowering generations and laying legacies, our students will be moderating our discussion today. And if you have not already submitted questions, please do so at 3:30 p.m. by placing your question in the Q&A field at the bottom of your screen. Your question will be visible to only hosts and panelists. It is an honor and a privilege to welcome Resmaa to join us this afternoon, especially at a time when the escalating backdrop of hate and divide reigns from the very citadel of this nation. It is easy to feel like our amygdala has been hijacked to the point of no return, and exercising resilience is just too high a price to pay. We are being asked to muster up strength and courage, and our reserves are running low. Resmaa, your very name offers us a model of unrelenting hope. And while we don't all share your name, would you please impart the wisdom behind your name as I welcome you to the space?
Oh, thank you, Sister Lynn. It is an honor, and I appreciate being here with you, with the community of Yale, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk about not only our ancestor, Dr. Martin Luther King, but all those that paved the way for us to even be here, for us to be even talking with each other, for us to even be not crazy babbling in the streets. And so I just really appreciate the opportunity. So my name, Resmaa. Res means to cause to rise. Ma means in the alignment of truth. Mena means mooring, and Kim means the black. So my name, which elders gave me about 30 years ago, means he who causes to rise in the alignment of truth using the foundation of his people. And in the Kemetic tradition, what happens is that your not only is your name something that somebody references you about, but it is also something that you grow into over time. So my name at 14 means something different at 21, or means something different at 28, right? And so hopefully in that emergence, in that evolution, you come to get to a place to where your heart is light, to where your heart has been cleared of things to allow you to actually that which was already in you to be emerged more fully. And so that's kind of what my name means, but it is also what my life's work is.
That is so powerful, Resma. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you, Brother Shaquan.
Yes, I'm Jaquan Beecham, class of 2021 at Yale Divinity School. And just to jump right in and to ground us in this space,
Mhm.
would you be able to share more with us about somatic abolition?
Mm.
More about the four cultural somatic practices of grounding, orientation, touch, and movement?
Yes, yes, yes. So my work is for the last 35 years, my work has been centered around trauma. And over the last 10 years, specifically around racialized trauma. How does trauma present itself and show itself in the body?
Right.
And not only does how does trauma present itself and show itself in the body, but how does that presentation get transferred across time? And so somatic abolitionism really is the idea that we are not going to cognitively get rid of white body supremacy. We're not going to just think our way out of this, because much of the ways that we process it is through the body. The brain is not fast enough, the cognition is not fast enough to be able to manage that. So somatic abolitionism is really, how do we begin to slow down enough to be able to understand and notice the quake, be able to work with the emergence of it, and abolish racism and white body supremacy in the body first. But that means that we must first slow down and pay attention and pause to those things that we don't really give enough discernment to. And one of the ways I work with that is to first start to begin to help people develop some sense of orientation. So these are the four, what I call four cultural somatic processes or skills or practices. So the first one is orienting, right? And the reason why I say that is because many times race, the idea of race, when you say to somebody, well, let's talk about race in and of itself has charge to it. It has rhythm to it. It has weight to it. It has texture to it. It has direction to it. And so the idea of race in this structure, in this philosophical structure, the idea of race has charge. And many times when we go to talk about race, we have not developed a cultural container by which we can hold race. And so the four cultural somatic skills is really a way to begin to condition and temper the body so it can be prepped to be able to begin to deal with race. And so the four are orientation, grounding, self and communal touch, and self and communal movement. Well, self and communal orientation, self and communal grounding, self and communal touch, self and communal movement. And those things, as I do my work, I work with those because I know trauma, racialized trauma, is going to show up. I know it's not if it's going to show up. I know it's going to show up. So I begin to help people work with those pieces first, so we don't start blowing and activating that energy and blowing it through each other's bodies. And so that's my concept around somatic abolitionism. And at the beginning, how do we begin to be respectful of the charge of race, right? And begin to condition and temper the body so it can actually do what we needed to do in order to move through and with race.
Thank you so much.
Can I say one more thing? I'm sorry.
Please,
Can I say one?
Yeah, sure.
So this concept of conditioning and tempering the body
Right.
is really a concept, not something that I created. This is a concept. I just looked at what my people were doing and looked at what my grandmother was doing when she would hum and she would rock, right? And have my head next to her chest and she would just hum, right? There was an alignment when that was happening. It is also what our ancestors did with regard to just if we look at the Honorable Martin Luther King. What a lot of people don't know is that there was a conditioning and tempering process of people who practice nonviolence, right? So there were instructions, there were practices, there were things that were done that in which they would utilize their bodies in little small repetition things. So when they were presented with the brutality of white body supremacy, right, they could hold, because they had gotten practice and could be able and got enough practice to discern things through their body, right?
Right.
That is what, and a lot of people miss that piece. People think that Dr. King just sent people out there. There was a whole practice of getting your body conditioned and tempered to be able to deal with the brutality of white body supremacy.
Right, right. So I'm hearing that there was a discernment of embodiment that was not cognitive.
Exactly.
Understood. Thank
The
you.
cognition when a German Shepherd, I'm sorry, brother.
No, you're good.
When a German Shepherd is about to rip a part of your body out, your cognition is inadequate.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Fight or flight.
Yeah. And so some of those things are what we have to now reclaim as culture. What Dr. King did was actually begin to put the foundation in place that would allow us to create a living, embodied, anti-racist culture, not cognition,
Culture.
culture.
Culture. That's
Yeah.
right. That's right. Thank you so much, my brother.
Thank
I will
you.
now pass it to my dear colleague, Nia.
Hey, Sister Nia.
Hello. I have to keep myself from just saying, preach, preach, amen. I'm just like, yes, speak truth.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm Nia Campina Bacote, and I am in my final year graduating. It is 2021.
There we go.
So here at the Yale Divinity School, and going off of what you were sharing about community and thinking about the communities that are gathered right here, right now in this Zoom webinar, the communities of Yale Divinity School and Yale School of Nursing. In your book, you talk about, and what you just mentioned right now, right? Cultural changes are really important, as well as you really highlight communal work. You talk about these as two major keys to any sustainable transformation.
Right.
So for anybody out there, if you have the book in your hand, on page 246 of my grandmother's hands, Resma, you write, quote, "Change culture and you change lives." Many well-meaning social activists overlook this essential fact. They focus relentlessly on strategy, but strategy means nothing to our bodies and our lizard brains. 2 pages later, page 248, you then write, "Right now, if we attempted to work together, we would regularly trigger the trauma in each other's bodies," end quote. So in light of those two quotes, the current moment and the reality of academic institutions such as Yale and how we can focus on strategic plans, and we're also realistically integrated communities of white bodies and bodies of culture. How do you suggest we best practice what your book is talking about, given the limitations or just the reality of where we are at in this moment of time?
So when I do my work in communities or in organizations or just working with somebody in my office, and we're starting to begin to deal with the racialized trauma, one of the things that I start with is just this golden rule. And the golden rule is then the organizing rule of this structure is that the white body is the supreme standard by which all bodies' humanity shall be measured structurally and philosophically. Now, when I say that, Sister Nia, I'm not talking about your beautiful innate value. I'm not talking about your intrinsic value. I'm talking about that we live in a structure, a philosophical structure by which pigmentation was used as shorthand to determine who was human and who was not. And then we built a whole structure on top of that, that took institutions like economic institutions that took institutions like educational institutions, that took institutions like religious institutions, and infused that ethos and that philosophical construct into those. And then over time, that philosophical construct and that ethos became decontextualized. So now it just looks like standard, right? So what happens is when good meaning folks get into a room together and say, let's talk about race, they don't account for the 400 years of charge that happens by not addressing those things. And so just coming together, right, or just saying we need unity is not enough, because you're not respecting the trauma that has happened because of that organizing ethos around the white body being the standard of humanness, right? And so the intracultural pieces really are about white bodies beginning to work with other white bodies and beginning to work with those pieces that they have not given voice to, right? Beginning to work with that so culture can emerge. We want to develop a strategy about how to work with race, but not create an environment so it can emerge and a new embodied anti-racist culture can actually emerge forth. We try and overstep that. And so one of the reasons why I don't usually do work where I have Black bodies or bodies of culture and then white bodies in the same room together is because I respect the charge, right? And I respect that that the Black body and the indigenous body is where America does its dirt. And so even good, well-meaning white folks will begin to step over themselves and do and say things, even if they don't verbalize it, because it is in the water. It's like asking a fish to describe water. It cannot, it just is. And so that is a cultural, intercultural piece. Black bodies and bodies of culture have to deal with these pieces of trauma that have been ingested that tells us who we are, and deal with the pieces around fraudulence and not really measuring up. That is structural. That is not individual. Those are structural, and they are traumatizing. Those things get passed down by what my mama recoils from and what my daddy leans into, unspoken, uninterrogated. And so part of what we have to do is begin to do that work separately, right? Without falsely slamming people together and just saying, well, why can't we talk about race? Because the standard is that the white body is the supreme standard by which all bodies, humanity shall be measured, which means that white body as a collective have not had to deal with race. And Black bodies and bodies of culture have had to learn how to navigate it. So that means we have developed discernment skills, the skills around vibrations, the skills around images and thoughts, skills around meaning making that the collective white body doesn't even know is a thing. And so that's why I talk about intracultural development as opposed to let's just have a conversation about race. That is a cognitive exercise, and a place like Yale, who has their very nature built around cognition, right? This is going to be a very difficult piece, right? Because what you're asking people to do is slow down and work with the other intelligences, not just the one intelligence of cognition, but the vibratory intelligence, the images and urge intelligence, all of those intelligence that give us some type of resonance, right? And then begin to harvest that and begin to harvest what shows up and emerges, and let that be knowledge as opposed to pushing that off to the side and acting like it is irrelevant.
Wow, that is so amazing. Thank you. I just thank you so much for that, because I mean, what you ended with, we are an intellectualized environment. We are the academy. We are in our heads. And so what you're urging for, which speaks to why like we've actually gone in circles historically.
That's right.
If we've put out 55 strategic plan emails for 55,000 years, and we're still out here dealing with what we're dealing with.
Right.
And you're saying, wait a second, if maybe that strategy isn't working, what if we turn inward? What if we pause? What if we actually say that our body has knowledge, which what you're talking about, right? Like indigenous cultures, Black folk, we already know that the body has power and knowledge intrinsically in it. And so turning to that, again, it's not a hate on the intellect, or it's not a hate on strategies, but it needs to be a both and we can't have movement through strategies without recognizing there's actually so much inherent strategy in our bodies that we have neglected for so long.
This is the Black joy pieces. This is the indigenous joy pieces, right? There is a knowledge in you that supersedes the intellectual kind of rubric that we have, right? And in many institutions don't know how to harvest that. They have no idea how to harvest that knowing and that knowledge and those intelligences. And I think where we're at right now is that there is this call. This is the decade of the Black woman. This next decade is the decade of the Black woman. The Black woman, there is nobody that is on this call. Nobody. I don't care what you look like. There's nobody on this call that did not originate from a Black woman first. The very first representation of creation on this earth was a Black woman, and everybody else came from that. Okay, the idea that the intelligence resides in Black women, and we can begin to tap that intelligence as a way to heal, as a way to move forth, as a way to begin to examine and interrogate what is. See, white body supremacy, the reason why we must abolish it is because it thwarts emergence. It literally thwarts emergence. The idea that you can use pigmentation as a shorthand for humanness in and of itself is a thwarting notion. And so what we have to be about is how do we begin to clear that stuff away slowly, body to body, for the rest of our lifespan, for white people to begin, for the people of Yale to begin to deal with enslavement. And the originators of Yale and their relationship to enslavement and stolen land, right? From the Quinnipiac people, right? Beginning to deal with that. Just as me saying that, something happened to certain people's bodies right now. There was things that began to move. That's where you start.
I could just keep going, but we are sharing moderation, so I'm going to send it back over to Jaquan with another question. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, sis.
My. Thank you, Dia. And thank you, Resmaa. Wow. So, Resmaa, in the face of the brutality that you mentioned, these relationships of enslavement, as we address the traumas of our bodies, Black, white, indigenous, police, and alike, how do we harvest this new knowledge? How do we slow down and move away from the shorthand, as you mentioned? On page 182 of My Grandmother's Hands, you share, when over time, enough bodies heal from historical, intergenerational, and personal trauma and learn to harmonize, that harmony can turn into a culture of resilience and flow. So that said, how do we harmonize as we heal? Can you paint a picture for us of what that flow might look like, feel like, or even sound like?
Yeah. So I start with resource. Resource is creation itself, right? When you quiet. Now, I'm not talking about religious bypass. I'm not talking about yogaing the heck out of something. I'm not talking about praying the heck out of. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about when you are quiet and you allow yourself to notice the quaking. In that moment, you notice you're able to begin to develop discernment. And what may show up are things that are untaken care of, unresolved. And if you can hold it for a moment and then allow it to move, and then when you get ready, come back and get another rep with that. Over time, what you begin to develop is a sense of not only what is difficult, but also what is resourced. Right? You begin to develop an embodied sense. Now do that. Now notice what would happen if you did that for a year. Just spent not 12 hours doing it, just like one moment. In this moment, I'm noticing, and I'm just going to pause and notice what shows up. Now notice if you did that for a year. And then what would happen if you allowed another body to actually witness you doing that? Not perform, just witness you, because another body can begin to see things and experience things that you cannot. And over time, there will be an alignment, a somatic alignment that now I can trust. And then that can ripple out, and that can ripple out, and that can ripple out. So now we give respect to the resonance and dissonance as opposed to trying to tamp it down. And so that's what I mean when I say flow, because over time, you begin to notice that which is resourced, and then also notice that, hey, there's a resource, but then I also notice that there's a constriction that's attached to it. And rather than trying to get rid of the constriction, I hold it. Not only that, I hold it because many times what happened to our peoples, right? What happened to our people, brother, did not happen individually. It happened communally. Right. So only developing individual responses to a communal horror is inadequate. White people being nice to me I like it. I don't want people spitting in my food or pouring drinks over my head. I would like that, but it is inadequate to deal with white body supremacy. In order to deal with white body supremacy, we must develop a culture, and white people have to develop a culture. And now, let me say this last piece, bro.
Please.
What we saw at the Capitol is not a mental health issue. It is a communal health issue that the sickness has become standardized.
My God, the sickness has become standardized.
So when you see what you saw, when you see people killing other people, when you see people defecating in the Capitol, when people say, this is my country, what you are saying is not, and what I always tell white people to stop doing is stop divorcing yourselves from your cousins. Stop, because it is unhelpful. Pause, figure out, how is that part of me, and how is it so decontextualized that it looks now like standard, right? And what you saw at the Capitol were police officers, clergy, florists, bankers, fire people, bloggers. You saw every walk of white life you could imagine, right?
Yep.
And in that, the first thing that I thought about is how parallel that was to the lynchings that happened in Duluth, how parallel that was to the 45 lynchings that took place after Jim Crow, during Jim Crow. That it was parallel because we think that when people do untoward things like that is an aberration. And what I'm saying, it is structural. So that type of standardization will not be dealt with by a cognitive exercise and strategy. It must be dealt with by developing a different culture, because what you saw in the Capitol was culture.
Right.
What the Proud Boys have is culture.
Yeah.
What the KKK have is culture.
Culture.
What does a white ally have?
Okay.
That's the point.
So on that note, with culture, standardization, I'm curious for the Black body, folks that look like us, folks of color, how do we address this culture, but
Yes.
also avoid this false idea of resilience, right?
Yes. Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
In the face of, fatigue and the
Yes.
brutalities you mentioned,
Yeah.
please.
So rest is actually a radical notion when it comes to the Black body. The idea of rest is a radical notion. It is not only a radical notion in terms of America's gaze towards us, right? GAZE, but it's a radical notion in that we have internalized notions of rest as anathema or as a connection to laziness or not being good enough. And what we have to realize is that rest, reclaiming a nap, right? I'm a napping fool. I nap, I can nap, right? Like after I get done with y'all, I'm a nap. I already know it, right? That's right. The nap ministry. It's because the reality is that the Black body has always been in this country, the Black and Indigenous body has been overridden, right? Right. And that overriddenness, we have internalized and override our own cues of what we need, right? In terms of rest. So the first piece for me is for us to begin to reclaim these notions, the notion around rest. Rest is a radical endeavor. The moment that Black people start saying, no, I'm gonna take it. I need this. I need this. This is too much, right? That now other things can begin to come in. So the notion of humming, the notion of rocking, the notion of doing that with another Black body and leaning and moaning and wailing. So many of our elders right now in this country have never gotten over the murder of Dr. Martin Luther King.
That's right.
Because they couldn't. When he got murdered, it wasn't like white body supremacy ceased to brutalize us. So we never got a chance. So that's why a lot of times when Dr. Martin Luther King, when the day comes up, you see a lot of grief in our elders' eyes. It never got dealt with, and they think something's wrong with them. Nothing's wrong with them.
Nothing is wrong with them. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, brother.
That was rich. I will now, transition us to some of our audience questions. I will pass the mic to my colleague, Taisha from the School of Nursing.
Good afternoon, everyone. Wow. My name is Taisha Saintville, and I'm a student midwife at the Yale School of Nursing, class of 2023. And I'm happy to be here with you all, especially on a day like today that not only are we commemorating Dr. King, but as Resmaa pointed out, that some of us are still grieving, still mourning. So I will kick off the question segments of this afternoon. And so our first question for the afternoon reads, for bodies that are differently abled or handy capable, or bodies struggling with chronic illnesses, where movement and touch already causes pain and struggle, how do bodies of color cope with feeling safe in their bodies when this is their baseline?
So when I get, that is a beautiful question. I'll just use an example, okay? When I get questions like this, one of the first things I think about is what I call fire hose training or fire hose learning, right? That what I mean by that is that some of us are thirsty, right? And we're thirsty for something, for knowledge, for safety, for reprieve. And so so what we make the mistake of doing sometimes is saying, okay, I'm thirsty. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to the nearest fire hydrant. I'm going to hook up a fire hose, right? And I'm going to turn on full blast and I'm going to try and take a drink, right? And what happens is that overwhelms the body, and it can push you back into an activation, a traumatic activation, right? So what I tell people is, when it comes to this type of work, this type of movement work, and this type of trauma work, the idea of safety, the idea of resonance, the idea of flow is always there. It is never not there. But we have developed protective ways of protecting ourselves from certain things because either things have happened, because of you know what I mean? There are things that have gone on. So we're not able to kind of pick up on the vibes of safety. So what I tell people is this: when it comes to this type of stuff, you don't have to necessarily have somebody touch you or whatever in order for you to begin to experience and deal with both the issue, the quaking of this of dissonance and resonance. So what I mean by that is, like, if I'm in my office and I'm working with somebody who has difficulty with either touch of another person, what I would do is not touch them, right? But what I can do is rather than me touching them, they can begin to play with touch themselves, their own touch, right? And not even actually touching, right? They can actually put their hand near a place that they experience may need or want more support. So just putting their hand there close to that spot will begin to have, or putting up or leaning up against something, or imagining that something is there, will begin to have the body begin to quake. And at that moment, if you notice it starts to begin to be overwhelming, stop, back out, go get away from it. And then when you're ready, get another quick rep in on it. And then when it starts to become overwhelming again, back out. And then get it. So this is what I call repping. You get reps in, not to overwhelm the system, but to notice where the edges are so you can develop discernment and then pull back, right? It is not go in and just start having people touch you. It is not you just go in and start touching yourself. It is that you begin to learn and develop discernment around what shows up. That the same thing shows up in the context of race. The same thing shows up in the context of how fraudulence might show up in a structure where the white body is seen or is structured as the standard of humanness. There is a structural fraudulence that is also given and sewn in to Black people. We have to challenge that into Indigenous people. We have to challenge that, but we don't challenge it by going full bore. We challenge it by noticing the edges. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And it sounds like you very much are uplifting people to that we are our first providers,
That's
our
it.
first healers, that we have that agency
Yeah.
to touch the edges, figure out what our capacities are,
Yep.
and to honor that and to
Yep.
work with that.
So can I just say one more quick thing? There is so in this society, like when I'm training people, one of the things that people come to me with is that they say things to me like, Resmaa, I need more tools in my toolbox. I need more tools. I need a tool to be able to deal with. I need a tool to be able to deal with. And what I really try and tell people is that we have to change that. This sister by the name of Lucinda Nato, she says she uses this thing where she talks about the difference between a toolbox and a toy box. And as practitioners, And as people, we have to think about not as tools to work with, but toys to explore with. And that this whole thing is really about exploration. It is about playing and being curious around what's showing up and working with that curiosity so more room can be made. This is a very important concept. I want people we don't stop thinking about this as a toolbox and start thinking about it more as a toy box.
Mm, mm. Thank you for that. And I think a good the next question that
No,
segues.
Leticia Nieto. Sorry about
Yeah,
that. Okay.
no problem.
Okay.
So one of the next questions that came up is in your book, one of the first exercises that you ask people to engage in is to connect and speak with their ancestors.
Yes.
And so we would like for you to expand upon that, especially ancestral healing and reverence, especially when folks may be feeling disconnected, have been cut off or cut out.
Yeah. So this is one of those things that I think we can do individually, but we also have to do also together. So I don't call them exercises. I call everything practices, because I believe there is practice involved. We have to practice, right? And so the first practice is, and in my book, I really caution people and tell them to go very slow in that book, right? Because the practices really are about, like I said, playing, noticing, beginning to be curious. And one of those things is and this is what I've noticed, when white people do this practice, they don't think anything will show up. And it does, right? Something will show up. Now, when I say ancestors, I'm not talking about some aberration in the corner starts to float down, right? I'm talking about something in the body might move. The vibrations may shift and change. And if nothing happens, that doesn't mean that something is wrong. What it means is that you may need to come back and get another rep in and get another rep in and begin to condition and temper the field so you can begin to discern what's actually showing up. One of the things when I'm working with white bodies that I have to deal with all the time is this sense of frozenness, stuckness, right? And so that has to be worked with. When it comes to Black bodies, one of the things that I find myself, in indigenous bodies that I find myself working with the most, is this piece around less than and fraudulence, right? And so when that ancestor piece, when I have bodies of culture begin to work with that ancestor piece, those pieces sometimes show up along with it. And that's when we begin to slow it down so we can begin to discern what are the things that are connected to, right? Not as a way to stamp it down and get rid of it, and right, it's a way to be able to develop the body's capacity to hold it so the natural flow and the natural movement can continue to move, right, rather than being constricted.
Yes. Thank you for answering that question. Now
Very
I'm going
welcome.
to bouncing it back to Jaquan to follow up with an additional question.
Thank you very much, Taisha. So one question we have from our audience.
I gotta say, I'm so proud of y'all. You three, I am just like, I'm sitting here beaming. I love the fact that y'all doing this. So go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Resma. We're beaming as well to be here with you today. So I was going to pose a question about healers, about Black healers. So I'm curious, what your recommendation would be for Black healers, pastors, social workers, therapists, etc., who are serving in communities of color while having to cope and hold space for their clients and parishioners, and while also navigating their own racialized trauma?
First piece is have your people who can watch you, who you can moan with, who you can rock with, who you can dance with, who you can laugh with, who you can be irreverent with. Have your people who can look at you and say, sit your butt down, come over here. What do you need? Right? Many times when we are giving and giving and giving, is tied to stuff that has been unresolved, not just our own personal unresolved, but what I call HIPP, historical, intergenerational, persistent, institutional, and then our own personal stuff. Right? And it all gets coupled together. And sometimes we need people outside of our bodies to see us, to see those things that we've been trying to hide. Right? When I call my mom, 3,000 miles away, and I talk to her on the phone, and she answers the phone, and we're talking, and I go, Ma, what's wrong? And she goes, nothing. And I go, Ma, come on. Right? I ain't got to see her face. I can hear the vagal nerve constricting the voice box. Even if I don't know what's going on, I know something is there, even when she tries to hide it. And that is real intelligence. And so for those that are healers and caregivers, right? We have to allow people to hold us. What has happened to our people did not happen to our people individually. It happened communally. So we must develop communal ways of healing and moving through this, not just individual ways. So you must be you must allow yourself to be vulnerable with people in your community, but you must cultivate how people take care of you. You must cultivate that. You must let people know, I'm not doing good. Stop asking people. Let me say this. Stop having people ask you how you doing. Because when people ask you how you doing, as healers, we always go, I'm good, right? I'm all right, right? Here's another, for people who know people that are taking care of congregations or taking care of people or are midwives or whatever it is, stuff like that. Don't ask them how they doing. Start asking them, how are you sleeping? How are you eating? Who taking care of you? Right? Those are questions that they can't by rote just blow off.
That's right. Thank you, Resma. We got one more for you, okay? I'm gonna pass it to my colleague Nia. Thank you.
Coming back in.
Come on with it.
I'm just really moved by that, because it just made me think about this phrase of it's hard for the body to lie. I think about so many friendships, relationships I can have with my parents. I'm fine, but like your body is constricting.
So your body, let me say this, your body is an amplifier and a conduit. So your head, your top of your skull acts like a bell. The jaw acts like a bone, like a bowl. So things vibrate inside there. Your shoulders acts like a bell. The hips act like a bowl. So things vibrate in there. So you may be able to try and get rid of it, right? But something is vibrating.
Yep. You can't hide that.
Can't hide it.
So the last question we have for you from the audience is actually bringing us back about comments that we're talking about when we looked at the Capitol. And so this individual asked, Resma, could you say more about what white allies have regarding the culture of the Proud Boys and the KKK?
Yeah.
Are you saying that white allies must recognize how their bodies resonate with the Proud Boys culture, or that they need to cultivate a new culture?
That they need to cultivate a living white allies. Listen, your white allies love declarations of independence. They love declaring that they're independent from other people, but they haven't developed a culture that can sustain what they believe to be true, right? They haven't developed, they developed strategy, but not culture, not a lifespan culture that says we are going to cultivate a living, embodied, anti-racist culture among white people. How do white allies bury their dead? How do they transition from adulthood to elderhood? What are the colors? What are the songs? And that's just the aesthetic stuff that emerges up out of being together and committing to each other to create a living, embodied anti-racist culture, not for the next year, but for our lifespan. How are our children named after white abolitionists? How are they? What's the process? Yeah. I can show that for you for the KKK. I can show. Do you understand what I mean? Yeah. That abhorrent behavior and that abhorrent ethos in philosophy is the very soil of what America was born up out of. And your idea that you're just going to be an ally and self-declare that you're an ally is inadequate to deal with that. I need you to do something and create culture with other white people that can hold what you hold to be true and what you hold to be faithful to. I need you to do that. Don't declare. How would I know that you're an ally if you don't tell me? Who are your people? Go cultivate your people. Don't tell me. I need to be able to see it. Yeah. That's embodiment. That's living embodied culture.
Amen. I mean, because the last part, which I think you just addressed of that question, was what does white ally mean in the light of white bodies' resonance with white body supremacy? And what I'm hearing you say is it's about that cultural shift, that cultural change. It's about knowing what's happening in your body, doing that work yourself, and also encouraging others that work alongside you, that self and communal. And that's the allyship that you
That's it. That's it.
You don't need a little memo going out.
It will show up in, listen, Sister Nia, it will show up in your voice when you start to talk. It will show up what you lean into. It will show up in the questions that you ask or don't ask. It will show up when you know when to yield and when to move forward.
Yes. Yes. Yes and amen. This is incredible. I hope everybody who has been watching and listening is just as nourished and healed and encouraged and challenged and inspired and feeling what's happening in their bodies as well. So thank you so much. And I'm going to send it on along.
Can I say one more thing to all three of you?
Yeah.
Always remember this. You are not defective. Something has happened and continues to happen to your people, but that is not a testimony to you being defective. You are not.
Thank you for that offering. Thank you for this time. And Lynn is going to bring us in for our closing.
Thank you, Nia. Well, Resmaa, we jumped on a rare opportunity to capture 45 minutes of your generous, generous time. I think I may be speaking on behalf of many of us on this call when I say, Resmaa, you have helped us to marry our heads with our hearts. The more we unpack the root of where trauma lives, the better equipped we are with reducing the suffocating anxiety that plagues our bodies. On this historic day and in these uncertain times, your research, your generous commitment to the real work, and your thoughtful service to so many communities builds a legacy of knowledge, imprinting on our bodies in a way that will allow us to continue to learn and to leverage through the very practice outlined in your transformative book, My Grandmother's Hands. Everyone on this webinar, I implore you to find others to moan with, to rock with, to dance or just move with, and be reverent with in communal healing. Resmaa, thank you for helping us find a way to go on. All of my guests, please stand by to appreciate Heather, Jaquan, Nia, Taisha, and others who made this event possible. And join us and other organizations and schools across the nation in illumination of buildings and the ringing of church bells and other places of worship at 5:30 p.m. tomorrow in a national moment of unity and remembrance.
Thank you.